Michael, before we get started, Mark and I have a very serious question. We both wanted to know, like, we want to be friends with you. Why don't you want to be LinkedIn friends with us?
Well, I can tell you exactly why. Because LinkedIn has a hard cap of 30,000 connections.
Wow.
I'm
I
literally
had no
capped.
idea.
I'm literally capped. I can't add people.
Yeah, we wouldn't know that.
That's incredible.
I didn't
I,
know either. I just
that's
accepted lots of connections
th-
for 15 years on LinkedIn, and I'm literally at the hard cap. So with their whole system now, people can follow me to
follow.
see the
Yeah.
content, but I can't reply with a reciprocal connection because there's a hard cap, which actually took me a long time to figure out. Oh, there's a hard cap of 30,000. And then I go in and look at my account. It was like 29,998 because apparently two people
Mm,
quit LinkedIn that day. And I accepted three more people, and the first two held, and the third one failed.
I think I mean, I'm in no danger. I have plenty of cushion, but I think you may have changed my philosophy on connect versus follow.
I mean, there's like random people I connected with 9 years ago who probably aren't even still in the industry who I could disconnect with. There's LinkedIn has no scaled way to review and filter your connections to mass unconnect.
Yeah.
So now, I don't have a good way to chop off 1,000 basically dead idle accounts of people I connected with in the early 20s who I happen to still be
Yeah.
connected with that's using part of that 30,000 real estate. I'm just stuck with an unscalable solution and can't really meaningfully connect with people on LinkedIn now. Very
Interesting.
frustrating.
Great. I actually had another just random question before we get started. How did the blue shirt thing come about? How did you get that idea, or where did that come from?
Oh, so the origin of the blue shirt. So back in the God, what's to be like the mid to late 2000s, like 2006, 2007 timeframe. I was the co-founder of a group called Next Gen in 2004, which was a community for younger financial advisors under the age of 36. Now it's part of FPA, but back then we made it as an independent organization. And so at major conferences, we would basically do recruiting drives. Like, oh, you look like you're under 36. Here's a sticker to put on your badge. You are now Next Gen. We're doing a meetup over here. Come hang out. And it was just very grassroots recruiting drives with a few of us that went to conferences regularly. So this was early in my speaking career. So I wasn't out a ton the way I am now. So then the blue shirt thing came about because we were doing these membership building events, and a few of the folks that traveled a little bit more regularly were often there along with me. There was like half a dozen of us who were active in FPA or other conferences who would come together. And so I was probably traveling maybe once a month at that point. And so when I was traveling, got to grab something to travel with, and I guess just subconsciously, I must have liked the color blue. So I had a blue shirt that I would pull off the hanger and pack it for the one day that month that I was traveling. Except from the Next Gen end, I show up to the conference, and one of my friends, as good natured friends do, are like, "Dude, third time I've seen you this year. Always the same blue shirt. Do you own anything else?" Right? Because this is the good natured ribbing that
Yeah.
friends give other friends. And I was like, yeah, I own other shirts, but damn it, I like this one. And I'm an entrepreneur, so if you want me to do something, just tell me I can't do it or I'm not supposed to do it, and that'll pretty much ensure I'm going to do it. So they gave me a hard time about the blue shirt. So I went, damn it, then I'm going to lean into this thing. And I went and bought 12 of them so that I would have one every conference going forward, probably partially out of good humored spite. And then it became a thing. And then I really stood up at all conferences for a couple of years in blue shirts. And then it was really a thing. And I decided, okay, I'm just going to own this. I'll own it as a brand. It's fun. It works. And I will say, because I mean, there are a few folks out there that write and talk about it. The whole reducing mental cognitive load because you've just got the same shirt that you pull off the hanger. It really is true. It works. It was not the primary reason that I did it, but I can actually attest as now a very busy person with multiple businesses that I'm responsible for. I really actually like the fact that for all the travel I do, I literally just have to count how many days there are to know how many shirts to pack by quantity.
That is
Yeah,
kind of nice.
that is kind of nice.
It
It
really
also
is.
means if you move off of it, people are going to notice, right? I think that's the other byproduct of this. I used to work at Facebook, so I'm very familiar with the philosophy of wearing one shirt as,
Yes.
a famous
Yes.
CEO who did that. But then when he moved off of it, people were asking all sorts of questions about it, which is, yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Good.
Um,
So Both Mark and I tried to find blue shirts to wear today.
Oh, I
And
appreciate that.
unfortunately, like, neither of us really have we found out that neither of us have much blue in our wardrobe and don't own a blue button down quite like yours.
All right. All right. We will have to try to help solve this and figure out how to get some blue shirts over to you.
I already know what my Halloween costume is for next year, but it's gonna be very niche.
All right, well, let's get going. So 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heinen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to AI for Advisors, episode 16. We are very excited to have the Baron of Blue Shirts, the grand geek of gross expense ratios, the figurehead of fiscal nerdom, Michael Kitces on. Now, he's an
Wow.
emerging
Those
podcaster.
were impressive.
I know, I'm so glad you did the opening, Mark.
I'm queued up. I'm ready to go. So, some of you might not be aware of Michael. He's an emerging podcaster. He's building his audience. He's been asking to come onto our pod for a while. We finally let
Thank
him
you so
on.
much for the opportunity, both of you. It's amazing.
Happy to help.
I'm ready for
I
my
will.
breakthrough.
We're always looking out for new talent, which is great. And so for the people who are not aware, which I think is like 1% of our listeners, Michael is the chief planning nerd at Kitces.com, co-founded XY Planning Network, AdvicePay, FP Pathfinder, and a number of other companies, and is now head of planning strategy at Focus Partners, which is a $95 billion AUM, and has actually published more data on what actually works in financial advisory than anyone in the industry, I think. I would say that's a fair assessment. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Love to get to nerd out a little on all things AI.
Very cool.
You're in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
And how are you doing, James? What's new with you?
What's new with me? I normally love that question because I usually have like so much to say. I've been nursing a sick household
Oh,
and sleeping very little. So what's new with me? Nothing fun and exciting like usual. But I've been looking forward. Don't get me wrong. All of our guests are fantastic. But I've really been looking forward to having Michael on the show. Partially because, well, one, Michael's such a big name presence in our space, but also because, just like we talked about before we started recording, Michael has been a little more bearish on AI than we are. And I think it's going to be really fun to kind of talk through some of the nuances of that, because I don't think we're as far apart as we might be staging it, but I'm really curious to kind of see where this ends up.
as I like to frame it, I'm just a pragmatist and realist, which was the pessimist version of being on the other end of an optimist. Right, but I mean, I'm certainly not anti-tech progression, anything like that. We've lived that space. I'm a co-founder for a tech company. Like I certainly get and appreciate the benefits of tech, but having been through multiple innovation waves in our industry, I've lived through, I'll just say, a few other hype cycles over the years. So I kind of get a sense as to what they look like sometimes. And as we'll probably get into, just have lots of data and experience on the ground of how tech actually shows up in advisory firms. And what we find in the data is that tech does not always show up the way that people expect in terms of how it actually impacts the firm and outcomes and what advisors do and where their time goes and who they serve and how their businesses.
So, I mean, do you think we're in the peak of inflated expectations? Do you think we're like entering the trough of disillusionment? I don't know if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, but you just referred to it.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think we're still pretty squarely in the hype cycle. Maybe we're towards the back end of it, only because at least people are talking about the possibility that it's a bubble. We'll see if it's a bubble. I'm not trying to name a bubble, but like when you're in the early stage of the hype's end, you don't even talk about bubble. You're just like, it's the future. It's going to change the world. When you're a little bit later in the hype end, you're like, oh, maybe we're overdoing it a little, right? I'm just flashing back. I started my career at the peak of the tech bubble, where like PE ratios and all traditional metrics were a moot point. All you needed was .com in your company name, and off you go to the races. And then watch pets.com and all the fun fiascos of the time. And like, look, the internet state, it has transformed our world. I can basically buy anything I want on my phone. I hit a button and it appears at my door in less than 24 hours. Like, holy crap, the internet turned out to be freaking amazing and changed the world. But we also said in 2000 that all bricks and mortar supermarkets were going to be gone in 3 to 5 years. And that was maybe a little bit overstated. So
Probably.
it can change the world, but still be not as world changing as sometimes the peak of the hype cycles suggest.
Yeah,
And I mean, we
absolutely.
went through our industry, we went through a similar thing with Robo 10 years ago. It was supposed to displace all advisors and disrupt the industry. And now we look back 10 years, 15 years later, like, well, we actually basically all use Robo tools in our offices. Like, digital onboarding and model management software is what a Robo built. So the tech stayed. It was amazing. We have fewer staff doing trading things now, and we need fewer CSAs opening accounts because the tech got so much better. But we didn't get disrupted. We didn't get displaced. The pricing hasn't moved one iota. The margins haven't moved one iota. But we've reallocated some staff and team to serve our clients better because tech was awesome.
So
It was
I
awesome.
take it
It's
you're
awesome.
not concerned about AGI happening in the next 2 to 3 years. I imagine that's one thing
I don't think so. I mean, look, there are way, way smarter people than me out there to really pontificate on how close are we to AGI. But you know, when I look at again, I like to do a lot of step back and zoom out and look at what's happening in the whole ecosystem. And what I see is CEOs of mega AI companies raising money, talking about AGI in a few years. And a lot of the very, very smart senior researchers who are doing that, who are saying, oh, no, we're like nowhere close. And we're not even sure LLMs are the right chassis to get to some kind of AGI framework in the future. And so I tend to trust the researchers a little bit more than the CEOs because,
Mm,
companies tend to talk their books sometimes. So again, like, it doesn't mean that we can't do amazing things and get positive outcomes from AI in all sorts of wonderful ways. But no, I'm not losing sleep that Skynet is 3 years away from us or anything.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, you're
I think
leaning
I
more
don't.
towards Elio Sutskever than Sam Altman. That's my geeky read of that.
Mhm.
Go ahead, James.
I was just gonna say that, like, I I think thinking about AGI comes up every once in a while in my head or in conversations, and the reality is, like, I personally have no impact or ability to slow it down or stop it.
Well,
So,
yeah, I
like,
mean, for better or
whatever
worse,
happens,
I'm on
happens.
for the ride.
Yeah,
If our
exactly,
if our whole world's getting disrupted, apparently I'm on board with everybody else to figure out how
exactly.
this turns out. But look, the challenge I have, maybe like one step more practical in that direction. So one of the things that fascinates me about AI and the way that it's evolving, for all the ways that we talk about artificial intelligence, kind of literally to the words, like, AI is actually remarkably dumb and inefficient.
Ooh,
It's an extremely brute force way, like a ludicrously expensive, energy inefficient way to solve problems. So I look at things like, I'm probably going to get these numbers slightly off, but directionally right. So Waymo and the like will spend 10 or 20 billion dollars teaching a car to drive itself with slightly better proficiency than a teenager on a learner's permit in 30 to 50 hours. So, like, just think about that. Like,
yeah.
Waymo's going to spend $20 million to replicate a teenager with 50 hours on a learner's permit. That's
You
where
won't get
we
me in a
are.
Waymo, by the way. I can't. I'm not getting in one of those.
Now, when I look at that relative to the world, I mean, I don't know what their numbers are. There's billions of cars and people who drive. So if they're going to spend $20 billion to replicate a teenager, but once they do, they can mass produce it around the globe and move 7 billion people around the planet more efficiently. That problem is so incredibly large as a marketplace problem to solve that they can very legitimately get a good ROI on the fact that they're spending $20 billion to learn how to drive as well as a teenager. Yay. I'm kind of excited to see how it changed the world. Like you, James, I'm still feeling a little antsy about getting in a driverless car because apparently I'm old. But
Well, I just read about it driving through a police scene,
yeah,
like in LA or something like that, like an
but like
active police scene, and it
we're
just drove
we're
like right through.
we're gonna get there, and it's a problem that's large enough to be worth solving that way. My challenge, and when we bring it down to the rest of what us mere mortal normal folks do, I mean, I look at things like the big struggle for OpenAI is getting the average consumer to pay $20 a month to sign up for ChatGPT Pro. And at the current pace they're going, they're still going to lose $500 billion in the next 3 or 4 years. So what does it take for them to actually be economically, commercially viable? What if the actual market rate when we get past the VCPE subsidies and the rest is that AI is $1,000 a month application, not a $20 a month application?
Yeah.
So at $1,000 a month, right? If I can solve the world's self-driving problem, huge ROI at $1,000 a month. There's a number of business applications in a wide range of industries where that is still an amazing ROI if I'm replacing $100,000 people with $12,000 a year software. But there becomes a floor about how far down you can go. And what you may get to is, like no one's going to want to use AI to write an email or a term paper if you've got to pay $500 to $1,000 a month for the software, because that's actually the going rate once we get to an actual like economic clearing level of the proper price. Now, the industry then will inevitably innovate and say, well, we still want to expand the market reach of AI, so we need a cheaper version. So either we'll get it better with software, we'll get it more energy efficient, or we'll make dumber models that are less complex and energy intensive, right? Like I don't need, the model that solves some amazing medical innovation for cancer research is not what my teenager needs to get help on their homework. So models become more segmented. Consumers will buy dumb models. They'll be smart enough to do things that we need.
Well,
Exactly.
or maybe they'll run locally, right? I mean, I think the
that's really where I was going to go,
right? Like if it runs locally, it's free, effectively, right? So I think that's
Well,
probably we did a lot of early work at Knapsack on that, and I think that's probably where we're going to end up. My prediction is next year we're going to have our first scale local LLM application.
Yeah, and I just wonder, like, how smart can the models be at local level scale with just local computing power and local energy resources? Or are we going to get to a point where every house's electricity bill goes up 200% because we're all running LLMs on our own personal computers and still like zonking the energy grid? And cool, then we'll put AI solar panels on every house so that we can power our personal AI, and it'll be an amazing future. But that probably is going to take a few more years to play out for us to all get supercomputers in our basements powered by solar panels on our roofs so that we can have our personal local scale AI solution. And it's probably still not going to be the same level and quality of AI as what a big fancy business used to do cancer research or astrophysics or all the like, I think like amazing big business, legit, super complex. You really need a redonkulously power AI supercomputer to solve these problems. And they're big enough problems that it's worth putting millions, billions, tens of billions of dollars towards that problem because you're solving legit societal global problems that's a worthwhile investment.
See, I think they're already starting to do that, and I just think there'll be more segmentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
There already are kind of I don't even want to call them enterprise, but like I don't know what the level above that would be, right? Like what you were just describing, like these super high level, we're trying to cure cancer. We're
Manhattan
trying to do
projects,
these sort of things.
scale projects.
Yeah, exactly. These like mega projects, right? There are tools that they're using, and they're going beyond just using AI. In some cases, they're already using quantum computing, right? A whole other thing when we talk about capabilities and what it takes to power a quantum computer.
But then part of my challenge, like,
or chill it.
I'm amazed and I'm kind of excited. God bless. We'll find the AI thing that does the amazing research and we actually cure cancer. But that's not the version of AI I'm going to get to use in my advisory firm.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, that's where I'm going.
That
I
would say.
I need, but that's definitely not the tier I'm going to get.
Well,
I was going to say it's like most technology, regardless of industry. I mean, even look at, I'm a racing fan, right? So you look at all the investment and things that are done in, let's say, Formula One, and what technology and learnings, right? I don't have access to a Formula One car. Like the average person, even the person with means, really can't get into an F1 car. It's a pretty rare thing. I think like Brad Pitt was one of like the very few who, like, after filming the movie, the F1 movie, actually got to drive one of the McLaren, like, older, like 2-year-old F1 cars. So it's a really challenging thing to even get into one of those. Aside from that, the technology from these premier race series trickles down into the everyday vehicle to some extent, right? And I think you're going to see the same thing, and you already do in pretty much every other industry. You're going to see the same thing where it segregates and it trickles down to something that's more useful for the general public, maybe more specialized. And that's what we'll see.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think, by the way, your estimate of Waymo's spend was pretty good. $30 billion is what I'm seeing here. And a little vignette, I was actually working at Google when they first started this. I was working on the Google Maps team, and I do remember being in line for lunch, and Sergey Brin was behind me, and he was just musing to an engineer, there might actually be a way to make money on this self-driving project. So he wasn't thinking maybe there isn't even a way to make money. I do think it's very different for Google to do this, where they have a fountain of cash coming out of their ads business versus like OpenAI, which has to like raise money externally. There's like two very different things there.
When you said out of their ads business, I promise you that's not where my head went. I really heard you saying something slightly different than ads.
Fantastic.
Either way, it was accurate.
Yeah.
But look, again, I mean, right. So for all that, I'm excited to see where AI goes. I don't think we're on the cusp of AGI, but clearly it's going to continue to get incrementally better because technology always does. I worry about how expensive it is in the aggregate, and that doesn't mean AI vanishes, but I really do then start to wonder about who really gets access to what tools, what levels is it at, and just this, to me, what I guess is the counterintuitive idea, like, what if AI is not a cheap solve, it's an expensive solve? It's a solve, but it's an expensive solve, right?
Yeah, what if it just increases the expenses for everyone, right? I think this is like a common thing people are concerned about. It increases electricity expenses for everyone, increases the compute you need on your local computer, so your computers get more expensive, everything gets more expensive.
Or your cloud-based software is more expensive if you solve it
because everything's bundled in
the cloud. And again, that still won't kill AI by any means. But you set a certain, tell me the price and I'll tell you the tasks that are worth giving to AI. And like, what if we get to a future where we say, you know what, AI can do all these amazing advisory things, but you know what the most cost-effective way is to do it? Throw a bunch of humans at it. Because the AI was actually really like, I don't need $1,000 a month AI to do a task that only takes my assistant an hour or two a week to do. It's actually much cheaper to let my assistant do it.
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to advisors, because that's actually a perfect segue to, I was at Future Proof with you, and you gave that presentation, and I won't recap it here. We actually recapped it on a previous episode, but you gave that presentation talking about investing in additional human infrastructure, right? Investing in people, adding 1 or 2 support staff, and what sort of returns you get versus investing in technology. Maybe just in your own words, give us some of your kind of results from that survey or thoughts on that, because I'd love to dive into this a little bit. I have my own thoughts, and I'd love to get yours first.
So a couple of things I frame here. I guess a tiny bit of level setting. What you're talking about is our productivity research. If anyone wants to reach the whole thing, kitces.com/productivity. It's got the whole white paper. This was a research study we did on productivity. Many, many hundreds of advisory firms across the industry, mostly independent based. We don't do as much in the big wirehouses and banks, but independent skewed. Many, many hundreds of firms. And we all boil it down to looking at their productivity. And we measure productivity by revenue per advisor, which to me is just the purest evaluation of how effectively can you translate your time and knowledge, things in your brain and conversations with your clients into actual stuff they pay for with amount of capacity to deliver it. Because we're all, right, everyone is a human who's time constrained. We all get the same number of days, hours. My ability to convert my human advice activity and the value prop of the firm into revenue per advisor, because the advisor and their time is the fixed container here, we find becomes a remarkably good measure of productivity. It also works well. It's like, I don't care whether you charge flat fees or subscriptions or AUM or earn commissions. I don't care whether you work with a whole bunch of small clients or a small number of big clients. At the end of the day, all of that adds up to you do things, you get revenue. We can calculate how much revenue you get per person that does things. And it becomes a remarkably effective like equalizer to compare across firms and business models.
Hey, Michael, can I interrupt real quick?
Please.
Just one thought. I at least think I'd find this interesting. It'd be interesting to take, like, let's say the top 10 of those. Like, I don't know if it's anonymous or you have the information, but like the top 10 of those most efficient firms, and actually do a study on like just them. Like, so what is different within them?
So we
and,
don't,
and how are they achieving these numbers the same way or different? Like,
well, so that's a version of what we do in our research. We don't do it at an individual firm case study level. we do it still with the aggregated data, but our team's a bunch of PhD research nerds behind the
Yeah.
scenes, which I say in a positive way. We celebrate nerd. That's not pejorative. That's positive for us.
We're all nerds here.
We're a team of nerds. It's
Yeah.
literally on our website. It's why I'm the chief financial planning nerd. And that's actually on my business card. The research nerds, we gather an immense amount of data. Shout out for all the firms that go through our research studies. It's often a good 30 to 45 minutes just to get through the survey, because there can be 50 to 75 plus questions that we ask in a lot of detail about who they serve, what they do, how much time it takes, how they price it, the clients that they serve, the steps of their process, the deliverables that they provide. Like, we collect all of that. So we then take all of that data, we put it into, oversimplified, the statistical models, and try to actually do the analysis to understand what are the things that are specifically associated with the highest productivity firms that they do well, and or the things that are particularly associated with the low productivity firms that they're doing particularly poorly on. And what we find in that vein is essentially three things start like rising to the top, that are all stuff that basically 2 to 3x's your productivity. The first, number one, huge one is team. Having people to delegate stuff to. Not necessarily huge teams, like you and an admin assistant and an associate advisor is about all it takes to get to peak team productivity. More than that, team productivity actually starts to come down a little, because you just get...
So this is the triangle team?
So we call that the triangle team, right? One at the top, two people at the base, an associate advisor, and an admin. And what we find is that the median triangle team produces about triple the revenue productivity of the most efficient unsupported solo advisors that we get. It's like, you take the dude or dudette who is super amazing with technology, personal productivity, automation, all the amazing things that they do as a super hyper efficient solo, and are like 90th percentile productivity and efficiency as a solo advisor, a third of the median 3-person team. A third. I mean, it's not even vaguely slightly close. The next thing we drill down to that we find surfaces out of the data is the affluence of clients. How much money clients have. From the perspective that I wish financial planning would go to all people worldwide and across the globe, I think it's an amazing thing in service to experience. I will admit I was not thrilled. Like, I was not rooting for the result. Let's prove that you make more money in financial planning by serving richer clients, but you unequivocally do.
Right.
It's not even slightly, again, it's like, it's not even close. Revenue productivity for $5 million clients is almost double what it is for $2 million clients, is almost double what it is for $500,000 clients.
Yeah. So I think it'd be good to like dig in a little bit into each of these, because I think these are both really counterintuitive findings and also really interesting findings. I mean, I think on that first one, assembling a triangle team might be the most high ROI thing you can do. What would you say to the solo advisor who is just getting started, doesn't have the ability to hire that 50K CSA, or to, basically assemble that triangle team, and they are looking for tools to make themselves more productive? What would you say there?
So I'd answer this in a few ways. The first, I mean, like, very practically, an evolution of firm, yes, there's a certain amount of growth you have to get to in order to afford your first staff member. Most firms start hiring this somewhere in the 200,000 to 300,000 revenue range. In a world of like virtual assisted fractional part-timers, maybe you get like a partial person at 150 of revenue or so, but that's when it starts to show up. And not really before that, because you just sheerly can't afford it. Yes, we do see in our data, and just, I don't know, I call it anecdata, like my anecdotes, having done this with a lot of people for a lot of time. There's certainly a bunch of tech that shows up between no clients and I can afford my first staff member, where you're just trying to get your incremental productivity out from yourself before you get to the point where you can hire a person and delegate. Now, here's the big asterisk to that, Mark, getting sort of linking these two together. The reality when you get your first 10 or 20 clients is that tech efficiency doesn't actually matter very much yet. And the reason is simply because 20 clients are not a full-time job. So if you are brutally inefficient in doing things painfully manually by hand, you can serve all 20 clients and still have time to do business development, marketing, and growth, because you're not actually at the container capacity, which is the 40 or 50 hours a week I'm working as an advisor while I'm building my business. You got to get to a certain number of clients before you hit the capacity container threshold where you say, okay, I've got so many clients that time is getting scarce and I still need to serve my clients and I still need to grow and get new ones. Crap, but I don't actually have enough revenue to hire a person. So there we see firms start diving into the tech. Now, here's the problem from the aggregate productivity end. So when we look at, all right, like how much time does it take to serve a client in a meaningful financial planning relationship through the year on an ongoing basis? When you add up everything that gets done, because if you're a pure solo, there ain't no one to delegate to. Like you do it or you automate with technology, otherwise you're doing it. What we find in our research, if you're working with like the $500,000, $1 million kinds of client folks, it's probably something like 20 hours a year, give or take a little. The meetings, the prep, the follow-up, cash in, cash out. I had a financial planning question, the one-off things, the time of context switching, because even if it takes you 2 minutes to do the task, it takes you 15 minutes to get back to what you were doing originally before the client called and you had to do the thing. So it takes time. Where do I
Sorry,
start
did you
hitting
say
the limit?
20 hours? Did you say 20 hours a year? Is that what you
A
said?
year. A year.
That's but
It's-
how does that square with like AI note takers? I think you researched it saves to 70% of documentation time. That feels like a much bigger.
It's not. So we published some time studies around this on our site. So rough breakdowns here. Of an advisor's full week, about 70% of the time goes towards client stuff,
Mhm.
kind of in the aggregate. So meetings, meeting prep, meeting follow-up, investments and portfolio management, research the investments, you know what the heck you're putting in their portfolios, all the financial planning requests that come in and all the stuff in between. Now, of the 70-something% of time that goes towards clients, and notably about another 10% is prospects, marketing and the like, of the roughly 70% of time that goes towards clients, only about 20 to 25% of it typically is client meetings, actually sitting in the meetings, right? 25% time times 40 hours in a week is 10 hours in a week. If you're doing 1 hour meetings, it's basically 10 client meetings a week, which is about where most of us are. Like I do 3 or 4 client meetings a day on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I prep on Monday and I wrap up on Friday. Kind of a common calendar cadence. A few of us are workhorses that do crazy high meeting volumes, but most of us are there. So to your comment, Mark, yeah, if I look at like 20 to 25% of my time is client meetings, 70% of my time is client stuff, you get to some version of what some of the AI folks talk about, which is like only about 30% of the 70% is going towards client meetings and the other 70% of the 70% is other stuff. Like, I mean, I think that's where that citation comes from, but it's not all meeting prep and follow-up. It's investment research. It's trading and management. It's the client asks a financial planning question. I got to look it up, do an analysis, plug it in the software, do an analysis in eMoney, evaluate the results, do a write-up, print it out, send it to the client, schedule a follow-up call, get on the client, do the follow-up call. It's not one of the regular meetings. It's just like, hey, I got to spend 10 or 15 minutes with you talking through the results of that analysis that you'd asked me about. Like it's all that stuff that crops up. We do find roughly on average, there is about an hour of prep and follow-up for every 1 hour of client meetings. That we do find and validate. And so that's why, I mean, the moment AI note takers came out, we were very upbeat on the AI note taker category because there's a freaking hour of prep and follow-up for every hour of client meetings. And while I don't think that goes away, you still got to look at the output, right? We can't blind automate it. And just practically from the human end, like even if the AI can make a instant agenda of everything we're supposed to cover in the client meeting, I can't walk into a client meeting blind and just start reading blindly off the agenda because I didn't actually prep like my brain as a human about what I'm going to do going into this meeting.
Requires
Like
prep.
we're not
Yeah.
quite at, Matrix plug-in download level of
Sure.
knowledge.
Even if you take that hour, you do 10 meetings a week, an hour of prep and follow up. So, if you take that hour and move it to, let's say 15 minutes, right? So you're basically saving, 3/4 of the time. That's still 7.5 hours per week that you're saving. That's a pretty significant amount. That's more than 20 hours per year. I mean, that's still, if someone could save 7.5 hours a week, that's about an hour a day. That's a really significant savings, I would say.
A sizable chunk. I'll admit, we don't quite see people, at least for my we don't necessarily see people get down to 15 minutes. It's still
I
more
see.
like it's still more like 20 or 30. I mean, I don't want to belittle. It's very meaningful time savings, but
Yeah.
I can't just look at the summary for 3 minutes and walk into the meeting. Like my
100%.
brain takes more time to get up to speed. And even if the AI is going to prep the follow-up email, it still takes me some time to read it and edit it. And let's be honest, some of us advisors are still two-finger typists. So if I have to make some edits that email, it still takes me some time. Now it's way
Yeah.
faster than me typing the whole freaking follow-up email 2 fingers at a time. And bear in mind, the other part of this, Mark, is some advisors don't take the greatest notes now, which means when you take great AI summary notes and then I edit through them, you actually don't save me any time at all, because you just take my short, crappy note taking process and turn it into a more voluminous, expedited process, which means there's a quality improvement. I go from spending 15 minutes on crappy notes to 15 minutes with amazing, meticulously taken notes that will be so much better the next time my client needs to come in and I can review the old notes and know what's going on. So it's a quality improvement, but it's not necessarily a time capacity improvement at that point. The
I think that's a
time
great
savings only kick in for the subset of advisors who were already predisposed to voluminous,
yes.
time-consuming note-taking. And that's not all advisors. That's a segment of them. It's the people who bought the AI note takers first for obvious reasons, but that's not all of them that are doing it. Some people will spend more time with AI note takers. They'll get a quality improvement. I'm not saying it's bad software or bad outcome, but it
Yeah.
doesn't show up as a time savings. It shows up as a quality.
Michael, I think that's one of the biggest myths. Like, I've been doing technology consultants since 2007, and it was true then, and it's true now, even with AI, that oftentimes what you're really getting is improved value, not time savings, right? The quality goes up, the utility goes up. And so technology isn't always about time saving as the end all be all. It's often a byproduct, and it's not even, and in some cases, to your point, it's going to take longer, but you're doing higher quality work or you're getting higher quality output. And so I think that's something that people have to frame when they're investing in new technology, using it. It's not always about people saving. It's not always about cost saving. It's not always about time saving.
So let me tug on this thread a little bit further for a moment. So a few things then I would connect into the conversation now that we've been having. So if I'm really not saving, I'm not saving 45 minutes per meeting. I'm saving 20 or 30 minutes per meeting. Still adds up 10 meetings through the week. I'm saving 3 to 5 hours through the week. Cool. On a 40 to 50 hour work week, you're saving me 7% of my time for the week. Now, over the span of a year, that's 100 plus hours. Again, that's significant. But 7% time savings. What does an advisor do with 7% time savings? Okay, I now don't have to be so stressed. James, we have to wrap this meeting at the top of the hour because I need to prep my notes because my next client's coming in 30 minutes afterwards. And I've got a very narrow time window because a lot of us stack meetings. You know what happens when the meeting notes are faster? I'm not going to push James out the door right at the top of the hour. Meeting goes a little bit longer because we're relationshiping. And I'm like, oh, I heard your family was sick. What's going
Fill in the
on?
time.
How are the kids doing now? Are they recovering?
It makes space. It makes space for more conversation. Yep.
Right. So, and right from the advisor, I go deeper with the clients that I've got. Now, what else shows up? When my last meeting is at 4:30 and it normally takes me an hour to do notes and it only takes me 30 minutes to do notes instead, do you know what I do with the time between 5 and 5:30 that I just saved? I go home early. I don't say oh my God, I've got so much time savings. Let's go get another new client and stuff it into the 5 o'clock time slot. I go home earlier. I work fewer hours. And you know what? I'm happier. I'm in a better mood. My family says I'm much more present when I get home. You know what doesn't go up? My productivity, because I'm not handling any more clients or any more revenue. I'm just working slightly fewer hours.
But
Based on that
I see
measurement,
that as
absolutely.
I see that as a different version of the quality point that James is making, right? You're going to be a higher quality person holistically throughout your entire sort of professional and personal life if you have this technology in your back pocket. And I think the quality and value addition is probably the more significant long-term impact here than time savings. I think the time savings is sort of an initial.
Again, all right. So now here's how I tie it back to the earlier conversation, right? Mark, going all the way back to your question of, so I'm growing and I can't afford my first team member yet. So here's where it really starts to matter. If I'm 20 something hours per client and I've still got to do business development and all the other things to run my business, where do I start hitting the wall? The answer for most firms is I start hitting the wall somewhere between about 40 to 60 clients. Because particularly if I'm not so tech savvy and efficient, maybe it's not 20 hours per client, it's 22 or 25 or a little bit more because, I'm really manual with all the things that they ask since I haven't built great system and process in tech yet. Somewhere we find around 40 to 60 clients, particularly if you're still spending a disproportionately high amount of time on marketing and business development because you're trying to grow the client base and revenue. Somewhere around 40, 60 clients, things start getting a little bit tight. So here's where it really starts to matter, getting back to the earlier research, Mark, where I was highlighting kind of like what are our two big triggers, team leverage and client affluence. So if my 50 clients have $100,000 or $200,000 each and are paying me $2,000 in revenue, I've only got $100,000 in gross revenue. 50 clients have $2,000 apiece. So I'm hitting capacity, but I don't have enough revenue to hire a person, in which case I have to start relying on tech because that's the only way I can keep moving forward since I'm getting squeezed. If I'm working with, again, we're not even talking super wealthy clients. If I'm working with the mass affluent, 250,000 to $1 million, if my average client is $400,000 of assets, 50 clients times 400,000 of assets times a 1% fee is $200,000 of gross revenue. I can afford to hire and reinvest. So here's now where it really starts to matter and show up, and indirectly the problem that we find. When advisors have clients whose revenue per client is too low because they're not doing well on the client affluence scale, they tend to rely on technology to try to solve their, quote, efficiency problem because they're not getting paid enough for their time, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if it's 20 plus hours a year of all the service work, when I really add up everything and I'm making $2,000 of revenue per client, I'm making $100 an hour gross on my time. It's really hard to build and scale a professional services firm on $100 an hour. There's just no money left to hire staff and do things. You need your revenue per hour to be higher. So the phenomenon then that we find is that often the firms that lean into tech to solve the problem of having clients whose fees are too low instead of fixing their clients. Fixing the fees, right-sizing the fees, implementing minimums, recognizing that unfortunately you're servicing the client with more hours and work than they're actually paying for, which means you either need to raise their fees or part with them because you're just literally doing more work than they're actually paying you for, and you've hit a scaling wall. And so the way that this shows up in the aggregate, one of the other data points that we had, not in our productivity study, but in the technology study that we released earlier this year. So kitces.com/technology if you want that white paper. So what we did in the technology study was we looked and said, look, firms use tech in lots of different ways, and we kind of put them into four broad buckets. So we gave advisor choice. We said, look, you use tech lots of different ways, but in your mind, what is the primary function that tech should be fulfilling in your firm? Not what's it actually doing, because maybe that's different, but like ideally, what's the primary function of tech? And we gave them four choices. Save me time, save the firm money, right? Just like fewer staff, fewer people, improve the client experience, or make my advice deeper and better. And so then we kind of broke them into two subcategories. We basically said all the people who said client experience and quality of advice, those are basically like people who use tech for quality. The ones who said time savings and cost savings, we called those tech for efficiency. And then we went and looked and said, what's the average size and what's the average productivity of efficiency advisors versus quality advisors? Advisors who use tech for efficiency have 40% lower productivity than everybody else. Advisors who use tech for efficiency have 40%.
So clearly it didn't work, right? Like you're basically saying they're trying to do something and it's not working.
It did work. I mean, I'm sure if we went to those firms and took their tech away, their productivity would be worse.
Right.
So
maybe it's just a lot less efficient in the first place. They're just like the less efficient advisors use tech. Is that what you're saying?
The advisors who have clients who are not paying sufficient fees for the amount of service work that they're doing.
I see. Efficiency measured in revenue.
They have too many small, right? So like I have too many small clients who just don't pay remotely enough. The solve is I need to double their fees, and my solution is I'm getting tech that makes me 7% more efficient. And a 7% efficiency improvement does not solve a 100% underpricing problem.
Yeah. It strikes me that we're sort of, the underlying debate here is really like what the pace of acceleration will be of sort of these AI tools in terms of how impactful they can be for you, right? So if we
Well as
feel the
where it shows up, if it's a quality thing or a time thing, right? Like, I
sure,
mean, if you follow
absolutely.
this to conclusion, what if the tech is such an amazing, mind-blowing improvement of quality that 10 years from now, the tech is so amazing, all of us cut our client loads in half and we serve far fewer clients than we do today.
At a very high quality level. That's what you're
At an
saying, right?
amazing a quality
Right.
level that's so good, I'm going to more than double my fees and my productivity is going to go through the roof and I'm going to make more money and be more effective serving fewer clients with greater quality. Because the interesting coda to this is if you look back over the past 25 years, that's actually how it's played out through every tech evolution so far. I mean, if you,
With the higher concentration, with people charging more, using the
yeah,
technology, investment
yeah,
bankers using spreadsheets like crazy
yeah.
to
I
do
mean, you
more.
go
But
back to
actually,
someone who was in 25 or 30 years ago, and like they had 250 to 500 clients, most of whom were random people they sold a product to at some point in the past 3 to 10 years that we called a client because you're on their policy or their brokerage account if they call with a service need. You're lucky to see them once a year. There's no systematized investment process. You barely do any financial planning for them. You're basically just a glorified mutual fund salesperson. And now we got all this amazing technology. We got the internet. We got the smartphone. We got robo and business process automation. Now we're on the front end of AI. All this amazing stuff has come forward. And what happened in practice? Client loads went from 2 to 300 down to like 80 clients per advisor. Fees have not compressed one iota. Average affluence of clients have gone up because it turns out now we're providing
Mhm.
such a valuable service that basically rich people are crowding out all the financial advisors from everyone else, which is why we have a giant 100,000 person talent shortage, despite 25 years of amazing technology
yeah.
enhancement, because
Well,
client loads crashed downwards. Quality went through the roof. Again, like you get so much more value out of a financial planner today than 25 years ago.
That was a lot of data that we just went through. And what I kind of took from it was actually something that I think about all the time in usually my first or second meeting with a client, which is what are the actual problems that we have that we need to
Right,
solve and in what order?
right.
Right? It's not a matter of like technology, the firms that focus on technology are not as efficient as those who focus on humans. I think it's really a matter of like they don't understand what their actual problem
Correct.
is
They're
and they're just
they're
solving for the wrong thing. And the data is showing that these smaller advisors aren't the ones being thoughtful about what it is the problem
yeah.
they need to solve
Yes.
is
I mean,
potentially.
thoughtful is a little bit harsh. Like I'm sure we're all trying, like
Maybe
I mean,
not the right term. You
we're
get the
trying our
impression, right?
best, but
Yeah.
But yes, right. To me, what it comes back to again, I think of the old Archimedes, give me a lever long enough and I can move the world right there. So different
Mhm.
levers have different leverage points to them. And so the problem we find that crops up in essence is team can beat a 2 to 300% productivity lift. Client mix can beat a 2 to 400% productivity lift. Just properly implementing fees and pricing relative to your services often can at least be a 25 to 50% lift when we really fix like a widespread range of undercharging and lack of minimums and the rest. And then, like, if I take a whole year to integrate and really learn how to use the most revolutionary of the AI enhancements that we've had over the past several years, which is AI note taking, maybe I'll save 7% of my time. And most of that I'm actually just going to use to go home a little bit earlier. So it's not that the tech is bad. I mean, I love my tech. Like it's not that the tech is bad. It's that often it shows up in quality improvements, not time savings or productivity, or not productivity or client load lifts.
Yeah.
And often we use it to solve actual problems that sometimes feel worse. I mean, look, letting go of small clients feels bleeping awful to everyone. Raising fees is freaking terrifying for everyone. You know what doesn't feel awful and isn't terrifying? Buying shiny new tech tools. So if I've got to deal with this problem, what feels good? I'm just going to find another piece of tech to try to solve it. What will actually solve the problem? It's probably not actually the tech.
right.
It's some
Yeah.
other problem. And it usually comes back to too many clients that aren't paying what it actually takes to provide the service or insufficient staff and team leverage. Because look, tech that makes me faster. team that lets me delegate lets me not do it at all. Right. So
Yeah. So
Yeah.
note taking, recordation of a meeting in a CRM has to happen with human review. So AI can make it faster, but I can't get rid of it. If I delegate it to my associate, I get rid of it. The firm does it, but it's not me.
Yeah.
So so this phenomenon begins to emerge that from a capacity end, tech can expedite, but it doesn't necessarily let go of a lot of things, which is both challenging because then there's a floor on how much you can move your productivity because you can't entirely
Yeah.
let go of some of the tech stuff. And it's worse because the cognitive load, right? If you look at any of the research on focus, task switching, multitasking, all of that, when you get really good at having a zillion different pieces of tech that each make each thing a little bit more efficient, you just start getting really stressed about how many pieces of tech you have to log in.
So the cognitive load is definitely a huge thing. I totally agree with that. I think in the Dunbar number, I mean, the fundamental question here is the Dunbar number going to increase with tech or is it not? And we're going to fool ourselves in thinking it'll increase, and then we're going to get all really stressed out.
And to me, the whole point of the Dunbar number is it's a neurological brain physiological limit that literally replicates across species, including birds and elephants.
Right.
So the idea that tech is going to change a fundamental brain constraint on how many human being relationships our brains are made to organize before we just start losing track of who the people are. I mean, that's a few million years of evolution, maybe, to move that number as brain physiology changes. That doesn't change with tech. And I think that's why, as you look at the evolution of tech over the past 20 and 30 years, our client loads keep going down. We're not moving towards higher client loads. We're moving towards more fulfilling relationships with clients that we're awesome for because it feels good and it's a great relationship. And it turns out it's more remunerative to boot. So why not?
Right. It feels good. So just so if people aren't aware, the Dunbar number is a theoretical cognitive limit to the number of stable social relationships a person can maintain. And it's estimated to be around 150, right? So, and then, yeah. And so coincidentally, and maybe not coincidentally, the average number of clients per advisor is between 100 and 150, if I understand correctly, right? You probably have better numbers than we do on that.
Yeah. I mean, it shows up there when you actually get down to even a lot of firms at 150 clients often have a 2-advisor team. It's like me and my associate. So it's really more like 75 per, because my constraint is not only 150 human relationships. It's that much love to my clients, because I've been to like weddings and funerals, and have that level of relationship. Like, they can't have all the slots. I also have my friends and my family that I would like to maintain a relationship with, and they need some of those slots as well. So by the time I get through my personal non-work relationships, I've only got so many slots left.
Yeah.
Which is how we often end out with firms.
It's like those 30,000 LinkedIn connections, Michael.
Yeah, you're not reaching out to your 30,000 LinkedIn connections,
which I guess is a problem.
Mark and I didn't fit into the first 30,000. So
yes, and now I'm capped.
Get in line. I'm
capped. Who knew LinkedIn had a hard cap on connections?
Well, I do want to ask you like a more ethical question, which is like, you're obviously going out and saying, go up market, onboard a new wealthier client, get rid of a less wealthy client. There's obviously the gap that's happening, right? 68% of people don't have advisors. They could benefit from advisors. And there is a general wealth gap, right? So I think it's sort of contributing to that. How do you sort of square that ethically? Because I think there's a counter argument, which we've heard on this show, which is like, we have a moral imperative to find a way to break this and find a way to service those people. And if it's not robo-advising, it has to be something else. And so we actually have to solve this problem. How do you feel about that?
So I'd answer this a few ways. I mean, look, I'll raise my hand to say I was one of the first people when I saw our client affluence results come out to have a bleep moment. That was not the answer I was hoping for. There was no goal or ulterior motive here to say, wouldn't it be cool if we could prove that it's better to go work with rich people? That was a result of the research. That was not a goal or an agenda from my end. Frankly, kind of saddened to see it for very, very similar to the reason that you're highlighting, Mark. But there's a few things I would tie to this. So the first is the data is pretty unequivocally clear that more affluent clients who will pay you a higher hourly rate are more remunerative, right? If you're a lawyer, working with people who have $1,000 an hour problems does way better than working with people who have $300 an hour problems, because even if you get more efficient at $300 an hour problems, you're still making $300 an hour. You don't You don't move up until you learn to solve bigger, more complex, higher stakes problems that people will pay more for. And that's true in law and that's true in accounting. And it turns out it's true in financial planning. But you can still make a decent living working with the mass affluent. There is a floor, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but it's still a good living working with, good old fashioned clients who have a couple $100,000. Millionaire next door clients, you actually have a pretty amazing metrics by the time you get to $1 million average. So, and I do find there is this distorted view of the industry because we put all the mega firms on the pedestal who have these million and multi-million dollar minimums. So just to be like unequivocally clear from the data, the median advisor works with the mass affluents already. The overwhelming majority of all advisors in the country work with the mass affluent.
And
not
just to
millionaires.
list, what is the category? Mass affluent, AUM, or what is the
Different people draw it slightly different lines, but call it $250,000 to $1 million of investable assets.
Got it. Okay.
That's where we all are. Now, it's hard to go below that. If I start doing the math again of like how many hours per year, even if I try to skim down the model, where does my client capacity hit either by hours of capacity or by Dunbar's number? What you find is it's really hard to scale a firm for less than about $3,000 of revenue per client. $50,000 client charging 1.2, give or take a little. It's really hard to get below that, but you can do quite well in the mass affluent serving that space. You will have more remuneration if you want to go work with millionaires and multimillionaires. But at some point, this kicks in like a version of medicine. I don't want to put too many judgments in the world, but the reality is that plastic surgeons in Beverly Hills make drastically more money than pediatricians. And from any kind of moral, ethical end, I kind of wish the pediatricians made more money. And that is not a reflection of the world. It turns out rich people who like plastic surgery and have a lot of money spent to look beautiful enrich plastic surgeons in Beverly Hills way more than pediatricians do. So you get your choice about whether you want to go make big bucks as a plastic surgeon for the rich, or if you want to be a pediatrician and help children in a clinic. A pediatrician doctor working in a low-income clinic still makes a pretty good income that's higher than the median household in the US, and they're doing okay. They could do better if they wanted to be a rich doctor doing other things, but you still make a fine income as a professional services provider. And I think of a similar vein in the financial advisor realm. Yes, the path to higher productivity and bigger dollars is working with more affluent clients, but we all get to choose where we want to be on that spectrum. And it's not like go rich or go home because you can't make money on anybody else. You can make a fine living well above the median household in the US doing good old-fashioned financial planning for the mass affluence for your entire career, and you can save enough money to put your kids through college and afford retirement and live a good lifestyle in the meantime. And if you've got certain wealth goals that turn higher, it turns out you're going to have to affluence your way there, not efficiency your way there.
Yeah, I think it's actually maybe more of a question for the builders in this space than the financial advisors. The financial advisors have to use the tools that are available to them now. And so I think they should follow your advice and try to make sure they can take care of their business, their family, their staff, et cetera. I actually think flipping it around, right? Like someone who's starting a technology company, wealth tech, could listen to your research and be like, okay, I'm actually not helping people at all. I'm like making people maybe less efficient, or I'm helping the least efficient people waste time. Like that would not be a great read.
Sure.
But I would actually take the opposite.
I would say you're creating quality.
Sure, creating higher quality outcomes, sure, but that's probably not enough of a motivation for people because you have to eat class when you start a company, as you know. So I would say that I would actually flip it around a little bit, and here's my counter argument, and maybe I'll put up a little straw man for you.
Sure, please.
Like, I think this is like we're in 1986, and you're arguing the spreadsheet from Microsoft Excel has not changed very much, right? Like, we basically are starting to see people save some time by using spreadsheets, but they're actually spending more time on spreadsheets, and it's not actually, the digital spreadsheet is not that different. And, it's not really going to have a big impact. And I think ultimately, I think the thing that does not actually enable is, just give me 1 second here.
Special delivery. Now I'm all excited to hear the end of the question. It's all revved up.
Yeah.
This is how Mark gets the questions going. He revs them up. And
I do rev them up. James gives me a lot of grief for long questions.
And then there's the drop.
Well, no, it's all good. I
just
just find it humorous. So that was the exact
like
moment
a good EDM
someone
song,
came to the door.
Yeah. So I think we basically have So it might be 1986. We're talking about spreadsheets. We're talking about whether spreadsheets make people more productive or they waste time. People are learning how to use them and what the long-term impact will be. And then what we're not thinking about is that there's going to be actually an exponential increase in capability, not a linear capability. And actually that people are going to ultimately have a lot more access to tools and maybe even digital workers who can actually help them. I think there's no way around the fact that the value of AI is linked to labor replacement, and that's a really big challenge, I think, for the industry. But I do think that I think my argument would be that your read now is a read for where things are right now in like a very specific snapshot. But I would say as people building tools, you have to build for sort of 2 or 3 years in the future. And the capabilities are actually increasing more or less exponentially, right? So
Well, but
it's very likely that things will be changing quite quickly.
Well, but again, I mean, let's take it back 30 years. Because I think the spreadsheet example is very salient in many ways. So, what did financial planning look like 30 years ago? If you wanted to know how much you needed to retire, I plugged your current assets into my financial calculator as the present value. I typed your goal wealth in as a future value. I plugged in a growth rate as interest. And then I hit the payment button on my HP 12C and I told you how much you needed to save for retirement. And if you weren't clear how that works, then I drew it on a yellow pad. I mean, that's very real. Like, that's literally what we did. And then if I was going to sell you a life insurance policy, I pulled out a rate book and I went to the right page based on your coverage amount to figure out your cost per thousand, multiplied that by how much coverage you needed on my calculator again, and gave you a quote for the life insurance on the spot. So then I got a spreadsheet that has present value, future value, and a whole bunch of calculations. And in fact, I don't even have to do it that way. I can do a line by line, year by year, and start adding rows and columns and get a much more sophisticated analysis. So we did that for a little while, and time went through the roof because it was really time consuming to make spreadsheets. Then software companies came forward and said, A, spreadsheet, crappy interface for that. B, we can do more sophisticated calculations where you don't have to build all the formulas from scratch. And financial planning software was born. Navaplan, Money Tree, like the early generations, it was basically a UI overlay for a giant spreadsheet on the back end and probably Microsoft Access data table of client information being stored. So then we got specialized software built on top of the spreadsheet chassis that now began to save me time to do this analysis because it would have been hella time consuming to build a spreadsheet that complex on my own. In fact, it was so time consuming, I wasn't even building spreadsheets that complex on my own. But now I got the spreadsheet out of the box, which is a much better UI that I could use and execute faster and then give to my client. But at the end of the day, the time that I got to use that is the time that I used to spend on my HP 12C calculator and the yellow pad and doing things manually. And so the net result, when I fast forward through 10 or 15 years from the first spreadsheet to the major financial planning software, is I'm still charging the same fees and working with the same client load, doing substantively the same things. But I used to give clients the output from my HP 12C in a yellow pad, and now I gave them a 150-page financial plan that was printed out from financial planning software. And I'm not trying to mock the long financial plans. The point is like, oh my God, look at the like freaking amazing 150x increase in output and quality and depth that clients got from the advent of this new technology and all the layers that got built on top. But then what happened as an end result in the process? Advisors started charging for financial plans for the first time, which means we provided better quality. That was actually so good, we created a market to charge for financial planning that hadn't even existed.
Right.
prior.
So you're saying it's inflationary. It basically does create quality, which allows you to increase your price and allows you to capture more value.
It's yes, although I wouldn't necessarily call it inflationary because I think you're literally creating new value propositions that are so worth paying for that people will pay money to get this value proposition for this offering and service that literally didn't exist before technology made it possible to create. And then when you do that, you create all these new jobs that never existed before for new functions in the advisory firm to do things that wouldn't have existed. So now we talk about the optimal team is hiring an associate advisor to support your team. That job didn't exist 25 years ago. There were two types of people in a firm: salespeople and admin that help the salespeople talk to more prospects. Those were the only jobs in advisory firms 25 years ago. Now we've got all these layers. Again, the irony is the technology so improved the quality and the value proposition that we made bigger, better businesses that added back and middle office jobs that didn't even exist 25 years ago. And yes, I tell the story sometimes. I mean, the second firm I joined had a wonderful woman named Betty. Betty's job was to open all the envelopes when they came in every day, pull every paper statement, file it into every client's file folder, because there was a literal room that was just the client file folders, check every single one to make sure that there's not a paper check in there, because heaven forbid you accidentally sit on one of those overnight. That'll get you in big trouble in a broker dealer. Betty's job doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
It's gone. It does not exist. It does not exist anymore. But Betty's job basically got replaced by Orion. And Orion, in that 4-advisor office that Betty used to support, Orion costs more than Betty. Orion's actually more expensive than Betty was. So I didn't get margin improvement. Prices didn't compress. Staff are still there. Now that I don't need Betty, I can hire an associate advisor. When I don't need an associate advisor, I can hire a tax preparer and roll out tax prep services for my clients and roll out a whole other new middle office function that didn't exist until we automate tax prep, and then I'll roll out something else. So the tech to me creates so much quality, Mark. The tech creates so much quality and value.
I think you're right, but I think it also created
an offer.
Also created Schwab. It also created like a lot of other things that democratized access, right? And I think it actually does both. Yeah. I think maybe the answer is it does both, and we shouldn't focus on just one or the other. I think there's probably a question of what the financial advisors should do now, which is, and a subset could actually have more affluent clients and provide better service to those clients. I actually think there's probably going to be room. My contention is that there's going to be room for a class of financial advisors who can actually support a wider set of customers. And those clients may actually not want the level of service or even the level of relationship context that you're looking for. Maybe it's not a robo-advisor, but it could be that there's some AI-assisted relationship that Gen Z is open to. That's
what I was going to say, Mark.
There is always, consumers have always existed on a spectrum, from pure do-it-yourselfers on one end to delegators on the other, through every single version of all this technology iteration that we've had. So there are, Schwab's a great example. They have, I forget what their exact numbers are, $4 trillion of do-it-yourselfer money and $4 trillion of advisor delegator money. And you can survive. And at the end of the day, the delegators that we work with don't go Schwab direct. And the people who go Schwab direct don't hire advisors because they're do-it-yourselfers. They're whole separate consumer segments in the first place. So as much as I actually
but that's what's happening now. And I guess what I'm thinking is 10 years in the future with the great wealth transfer, like what's the picture going to be like 10 years in the future? Because I think that's actually the most important thing. Is it still going to be roughly split half-half? Are people now more inclined to are they more comfortable with AI, or they don't want to have the 1 hour meeting where there's meeting prep and you get like a document, or is that just, is that not going to be?
Mark, here, let me jump in for a second. One of the things that I think about here is, especially when you're talking about like a 10-year time horizon, I think there's a lot of lessons from what Michael has talked about and what the data shows about going into the ultra high net worth, revamping your fees, etc., making a decision. Are you a pediatrician? Are you a plastic surgeon? Right. I think there's a lot to be said for that, but to probably the path you're going, I think there's a lot of technology, right, that's going to enable being able to provide some comparable services, maybe a lighter financial planning, lighter investment management. We've already had robos for a while, down market. But what I tell a lot of firms that I'm engaging with is your business strategy should really be thinking about this as a funnel, and an age funnel as well that correlates to the transfer, right? The great wealth transfer. And so how do I engage with these younger clients now so that I don't have to fight for their business later?
I mean, this is a little bit of another theme, but we find very poor results for firms that actually try to do that and go down the family tree.
I'm not even suggesting the family tree, although I do think there's some of that. What I'm really thinking about is offering different services largely via technology or partners to establish a relationship,
Well, look,
right? And I think there's going to be technology platforms that will insert themselves and start to do this at scale and make this profitable without being a financial advisory
well,
business.
at some point, you're just not an advisory firm. You're a piece of tech for do-it-yourselfers. Like, look, here's
Yes.
how I view it. You can make $1 trillion as an AI solution that completely serves tens of millions of consumers, and you won't take one client from advisors in the process. They're mutually exclusive, discrete markets, and they always have been. Betterment and Wealthfront got whatever it is, $150 billion between the two of them. You know who they've got? People who don't hire advisors.
But some graduate though.
Robinhood's building the same thing. And like, what did Robinhood do as they realized that people are getting wealthier on their platform? They bought Trade PMR because they discovered that when people get enough wealth, their lives get complex, that now they actually want the financial advisor.
That's my point though. People graduate,
and move into that realm. But what does that mean from the advisor end? Cool. Keep doing things for people that have complexity. When their lives get complex enough, they'll call you, because that's how it's always worked. I mean,
what's your advice with the great wealth transfer? If like going down the family tree doesn't work for people, is it just the expectation that the current advisor is going to retire before it happens and it doesn't matter? Or what
I mean,
do you
it's
think?
twofold. At the individual advisor level, yeah, the median advisor age is early mid 50s. Most advisors will actually retire before this is a material impact for them. I mean, even your clients get in your 60s and 70s, mortality, not to be more, but like mortality tables don't really kick in until your clients get into their 80s and 90s. You've got some time. Slightly more practically. So here's the analogy I would tell. So take a step back for a moment. Imagine you run a nursing home, like a really high-end, where they are, $25,000 a month, $300,000 a year nursing home, like one of the ones that actually makes money, providing genuinely high quality services to people who at that point have a lot of money, because you got to have a lot of money if you were dropping
Important to go
$300,000
up market in that industry.
on a nursing home. So you run a $300,000 a year nursing home business. So the good news, you actually run a successful, profitable nursing home. The bad news, your customers die on a regular basis. So how do you deal with this? Here's the industry's version of how you deal with this. Well, you should make friends with the children and grandchildren of your nursing home residents. And then you can put like iPads in the rooms and Xboxes in the lounges. So that way, when your client passes away and they leave several $1 million to their grandchildren, you can convince the grandchildren to move in because you're a really tech-savvy nursing home. You're still a freaking nursing home. No millennial is going to move into your tech-savvy nursing home, even if they inherit enough money.
Doesn't that really undervalue what financial advisors do? Because what they're relevant for people when they're 30s. They're relevant for people in their 40s. They're relevant.
Not when you're specialized in working with retirees. I mean, I would take the other end, Mark. I think it's very overstated for us to say, well, since you have money and a pulse, I know how to give all the advice to you, regardless of your age, stage of life, and specialized needs and circumstances. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it turns out that student loans are actually so freaking complex that if you specialize in retirees and Social Security optimization, you have literally no business offering one iota of advice to a millennial any more than if you are the world's leading cardiologist and you do knee surgery on someone, you are going to get sued out of existence because you are a heart surgeon, not a knee surgeon.
Sure, but these are people who are going to be inheriting significant sums, so presumably they do need advice, right?
Yeah, from someone, but not you. Not you. I mean, if you're the high-end nursing home and your problem is that your patients die on a regular basis, you don't put tech into the lounges to try to get the grandchildren to inherit. You call the discharge nurse at every local hospital and you explain that when you have a patient you're discharging who seems to be fairly affluent and has a very high level of expectations, the one that's driving you nuts at the nurse's station because they expect you to hop to every
send them our way. Yeah.
And don't understand that you have a whole lot of patients on the floor that you got to deal with. You know who I'm talking about, Mr. or Mrs. Nurse. When you get that patient, you send them to me. We specialize in your biggest pain in the backside, high service, high dollar, high maintenance patients. And you will always remember every time you're dealing with one of those, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait until we can discharge them. I'm sending them to Kitces and they can deal with them going forward. And guess what? Now I get a continuous flow of high quality, best fit patients for my nursing home. So I'm actually continuing to provide my sweet spot services for my sweet spot client. I'm not trying to chase it down the family tree and say, since I run housing and you have money, I should be able to provide housing services to you and just pretend that no one's going to notice you're an up and coming millennial and I run a nursing home.
The problem with that analogy, though, Michael, is that like you're talking about something that is very acute. It's happening at a point in time, and the only analogy that I can think of there is like identifying a money in motion event.
Well,
But they may already have,
yes,
which is what these AI tools are doing. These lead gen tools are doing, but you may have to have this relationship earlier. When a nursing home tends to be a decision that you sort of make on the fly because something critical happens
well,
to
and
you.
guess what?
You reach some sort of point where you're making a decision in a relatively short period
That's
of time.
what triggers most clients to buy financial advisors as well. You know,
Okay, fair
right?
enough.
No one wakes up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like, oh my God, I don't have a comprehensive financial plan and I can't sleep. And I'm just not going to be able to fall back asleep until I pull out my phone at 2 o'clock in the morning and I look this up on the internet and solve this for myself. Like, these are not the things that people are up at 2 o'clock in the morning about. I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning because of high stress money, emotion, or complexity events that are creating actual stress for me, which is why
That's
people
fair.
don't come into an advisory firm saying, I need a comprehensive financial plan. They come into an advisory firm saying, I think I'm going to retire at the end of the year and I'm not sure if I have enough money. And apparently you're the leading expert in figuring that out. So help me, because I've got a time constrained window of moments of complexity and emotion event coming up and I need help. And that's always been true for advisors, right? It's why we show up at retirement rollovers and business liquidity events and divorces and deaths. These are the life transition, money in motion, complexity change events that trigger people to say, I've never had a financial advisor in all my life, but today, this Tuesday, is the day I'm going to
Yeah.
get off my duff and actually deal with this. And you got to have a lot of pain because, frankly, our industry makes it a royal pain in the backside to actually get a financial advisor and figure out who a good one is. So you have to be highly motivated with a very significant complexity pain point happening in your life to actually go get a financial advisor. And so the marketing advice then becomes, well, just figure out what the money in motion events or complexity triggers are for the clients that you serve. And you don't have to seed these relationships that you hope you're going to get through 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years from now. You can start bringing in prospects next week or next month who are actually ready to do business with you.
No, I think you're right. That's where Finney's Wealth Hawk, Wealth Feed, AI identified, Catchlight, etc.
Yes, with
really start to come
correct.
in.
With the small caveat that most advisors hate prospecting with a passion. And the primary goal of almost every advisor is to grow to the point that you don't need to prospect anymore. So, and you'll just be able to rely on referrals. So I will admit, I love the feature set of a lot of the AI prospecting tools. I do worry a little bit about I like the market size in the aggregate, because when your customer's primary goal is to grow enough with you that they can stop and never have to use you for the remainder of their career, it's challenging. I mean, there's some small subset of firms that will prospect till the cows come home. They're just like wired that way
Exactly.
and grow indefinitely, but it's a fairly small percentage. So just
Well, see, I was going to challenge you.
be
I was
careful
going to
how
challenge
big
you a
your
little on that.
addressable
I mean,
market is.
maybe it probably is small in percentage, but like the firms that continue to grow and establish these multi-billion-dollar AUMs are the firms that don't rely on just organic means of word of
Yeah, or at
mouth
least not
referrals.
passive organic
They
means.
have
Correct.
engines that are
Correct,
driving.
but
Yeah,
there's
and there are
only
also incoming
only so
new
many.
advisors, right? There has to be new advisors because the demand is growing, right?
Well,
Yeah, to your point.
Mark, that's the true aggregate issue, right? If you want to, like, let's zoom all the way out for a moment. Cerulli pegs us at about 300,000 financial advisors. It's weirdly hard to count because of all the different regulatory regimes that overlap, but I think they do as good work of anyone out there in trying to count us. There are 300,000 financial advisors, and most of us cap out at, and I'll be generous, 100 meaningful financial planning relationships. 300,000 advisors, 100 planning relationships, 30 million households served. There are 130 million households in the US. So our entire aggregate capacity literally can't serve a quarter of the households in the US. And so when you ask the question, right, like, why is it that we're so clustered in the upper echelons of wealth? I mean, it basically comes down to they buy literally all of our capacity in the aggregate. And at some point as an individual advisor, you're like, I can keep trying to make not enough money to put food on my table serving people who can't afford my services, or I can just make a really good living serving the mass affluent. And most of us end up drifting there. And even if the technology does amazing things and lifts us to 150 clients per household, and we
Yeah.
go like right to the hilt of the Dunbar number, like congratulations, we still can't serve anything more than a third of all households in the US because there just aren't enough of us. And frankly, 300,000 financial advisors, while I respect Cerule's number for financial advisors, let's be honest, not all of these people are really doing financial planning. Some of them are primarily product salespeople working in brokerage and insurance that are really not doing all that much meaningful advice and planning. If you want to baseline it as at least you've got CFP certification and you're going deeper, that's a little over 100,000 people in total, which means we have enough CFP professionals to not even serve the top 10, 15% of households in the country in the aggregate across all of us.
Yeah,
And
I think
so,
that's the fundamental question is like what's going to happen as the market grows and demand grows? How is that demand
well,
going to be
I
catered
mean,
for?
the number of CFP professionals has gone up X in the past 20 years, and they're now 50 years into the CFP marks. The past year has been the largest year in history for the number of people sitting for the exam. So the demand is drawing in new advisors. It's still a massive shortage. There clearly is a supply demand imbalance. But ironically to me, Mark, it's almost a version of how we were talking about this earlier in the client context. Again, I love the technology. I love all incremental improvements. Like it's all good, but a lot of firms use tech to solve a client affluence problem. And I feel like the industry in the aggregate is trying to use tech to solve a talent shortage problem. And like the tech helps. Like clearly having tech efficiency is better than not. And I'm not going to say anything otherwise. Like clearly the reality. But we have such a shortage of talent that I mean, you want to lift everyone's client load by 50%, which I will argue till the cows come home is literally never going to happen. But even if we want to go there, you're going to go from serving a quarter of households to a third of households. We still can't serve the other two thirds because we just don't even
Yeah.
have the super tech efficient people to do it, if that's even the direction that the tech takes us and it doesn't take us in a quality direction where we do deeper, more meaningful advice, but we don't actually add a lot of client load. Then we just have a
Yeah.
more client short or talent shortage than we do today. Which is
Here,
why
so
at a
Mark,
meta level, as people keep looking at the profession saying, do I need to worry that AI is going to displace financial planners? I'm like, y'all don't understand how much of a talent shortage we have. Like, oh my Lord, so much demand relative to even what the
it
tech
would
efficiencies can bring us, which is also why I do think direct to consumer versions of this that are tech for the DIYs is going to be a successful channel as well. I only the hair on my back of my neck only goes up when people say we're making this amazing tech for consumers and we're going to displace advisors. Like you don't displace us, you're a different channel. And they both
yeah.
coexist on something.
I appreciate it. Let's go to rapid fire if you guys don't mind. I do have a rapid fire question, which is what is your favorite AI tool that you use day to day? What have you found really useful?
Yeah, I mean, I'm boring. Like I ChatGPT, I log into ChatGPT and I find stuff to do. I'll admit probably not every day even, because there's only quite so many things it really solves for effectively and directly. But like I'm in a couple of times a week with stuff I'm brainstorming on. I use it a lot as a brainstorming buddy. I use it a lot when I'm trying to find the right words for a thing. And that's still my most frequent login of AI stuff.
And do you use an AI browser?
Not actively. I've experimented a little bit with Comet and the like. If I'm going to do some kind of search like that, I'm probably just going to Perplexity directly or like deep searching in ChatGPT if it's something in that vein. I've tried some of the AI browsers. I'm just like I'm fascinated by the potential. I don't know the user interaction isn't quite checking the box for me yet.
I will say I've been playing with Comet, and one of the things it can do is obviously like take control of your browser. So if you ask it to do certain tasks, that can be really helpful to like whether it's something simple like, help me find a new tire or help me find the best price on something or whatever. Some things like that are really kind of niceties, and you can run Perplexity right on the side there. And I am going to give a shout out to Mark's platform real quick. We don't often do this, but Mark's got a sidebar you can install in like Comet, that's where I use it, or Chrome or any other Chrome browser that works with his product that makes it nice to kind of have it
So it's a
right there built into
co-browsing,
your
co-browsing.
tools. Yeah, so a lot of people live in their browser now. And so I think that's like one of the first tools that I've seen that implemented that, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. So kudos, Mark. I think you're a leader on
Yeah,
that one.
thank you very much. Do we have a final rapid fire? I'm just conscious we're up
I
against
mean,
time.
I got one. I mean, we sort of covered it a little bit, but I want to get Michael's take. Biggest mistake advisors make with technology.
Switching to a new tool instead of learning how to better use the one you've got.
I love it.
That's great.
As a consultant, I'm just going to say yes.
Yeah, I just we see it all the time, all over the place, that a lot of advisors switch to a new tool when the reality is they could have gotten to a viable solution with their current tool, but either they didn't have the training, they didn't take the time, they didn't get the consultant they needed to get the unlock. And right, and again, just from the perspective of levers, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to spend 2 or 3 hours going through the training program, but I'll spend 50 hours migrating my data and learning a new piece of tech. That crops up more often than it should. I'm sorry to anyone who's listening. I just like called you out, but just
I'm just going to
happens a
say
lot.
yes, no notes.
Yeah, which is a challenge. I mean, it's an opportunity and challenge for people building new tools and trying to sell them into people.
Correct. I mean, Mark, it's a good thing to highlight from the perspective of just like building tech for advisors as well. I mean, we measure in our tech study every other year how many advisors are looking at switching tech in all the various categories. So we essentially measure a switch rate, and the switch rate for most tech is 3 to 7%, which basically means advisors change tech somewhere between once every 14 years and once every 30 years in any particular category.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah,
But
and
if you create a
that's
new
gonna change.
category, it's different, right? I guess that's why
yes,
note takers
it's a little
was so
different. You create a
Yep.
new category, so that's why some folks like Jump have done so well. Beyond that, I mean, look, it's still a large marketplace, at least by advisor standards, and a couple percent moving every year if you get the bulk of new market share. Build some pretty amazing companies. I find I have these conversations a lot when I'm either talking to founders or sometimes talking to investors going into advisor tech, because they overestimate the potential speed of adoption and underestimate how slow the move is. You know, if you're funding for a 3 to 5 year sprint and exit, that tends to go very poorly in the advisor space. Maybe if you're creating a new category, but a lot of people create new categories that flop. I mean, robo was a new category and it just got assimilated into existing tech. It's hard to create a sustainable new category. Otherwise, you can build some amazing tech by winning, 2% market share a year, 300,000 advisors. It's a couple thousand users a year. Do that for 5, 10, 15 years. You got an amazing company, but that's the actual growth path of basically everything that's large in our industry today. Is they're building on that pace. So make sure you, and if you're a tech advisor, tech founder in particular, at least, like make sure you're actually pacing yourself for a marathon and not a sprint, or you're going to burn out too quickly sprinting a marathon.
All right. Absolutely final question. 5 years from now, will the average advisory firm have more or less staff?
5 years from now, slightly less staff, but not in the path inversion that people think. So here's our frame it. Advisory firm will have the same payroll 5 years from now that they do today. But the payroll is going to be slightly fewer, lower and entry level and admin style positions, and slightly more inexpensive middle office positions. If you think about, like, a lot of firms will shed an admin or two and add another tax preparer. It's those kinds of shifts that I think you're going to see play out. So you might have slightly fewer headcount, but you're going to replace it with more expensive payroll, doing more expensive value adding middle office functions. And you'll run the same operating expense ratio and the same profit margin for probably the same fee.
I love it.
Well, you've been very generous with your time. Really appreciate it, Michael.
Absolutely.
Where can people see you speak next?
Oh gosh, where am I speaking next? So Kitces.com is our main site and platform for all of our stuff. When I think out for 2026, I'll be at Kingdom Advisors. I'll be at Wealth.com's conference. I'll be at Nitrogen. I'll be at Future Proof, and I'll be at T3. That's probably the main stuff you'll see me at for first couple months of the year.
Awesome. Never get tired of conferences, I imagine. So that's cool. Look for the blue shirt.
At least you'll know you already know what you're
I
going to
know
wear.
what I'm going to wear.
That's the
I
best
just
part.
have to pull them off the hanger and throw them in the bag. It's great.
It's great. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time,
My pleasure.
and looking forward to seeing what you release next.
Yes, absolutely. Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks in particular to Michael for being so generous with the time. Because he was so generous, this was a tough one to edit, and we had some really great nuggets that didn't make it into the primary cut, but I wanted to leave them at the end here as a director's cut, to get Michael's insights into LinkedIn, the social media landscape, and his risk aversion. Please keep listening, and please subscribe and leave comments on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform to let us know how it's going. That really helps us. Thank you very much.
I do have a question. I thought I read when I was doing some background. Have you made the comment or described yourself as risk averse? Is that okay?
I am not the blind leap entrepreneur. I'm the
That's where I'm going.
measure and analyze the bejesus out of something before I'll go and take action. I guess relative to a lot of folks out there from the entrepreneurial end, I can actually get to the action moments, right? I don't stay indefinitely in analysis paralysis phase,
Right.
as it were. But yeah, I have to analyze the bejesus out of something. And even then I'll usually step in somewhat timidly. I've got it here somewhere. Like I'm a huge fan of like Eric Ries's lean startup, right? Like what is
Yeah.
my minimum viable product I can put out there just to validate that there's real consumer or advisor in our that there's real demand for this, that someone will actually pay something for it. Let's not overinvest into the thing until we've really validated that we can build a prototype and generate demand for it. Like I very much think in those terms, which to me are like additional layers of risk aversion, essentially. Like I'm
Yeah.
not going to plow in a whole bunch of money and take a blind leap and let's see how it turns out. I'm very measured about the businesses that we build and create. But I also now 25 years into a space I've been dedicated to, I've gotten pretty good at seeing what those gaps and opportunities are. And I still have to do my analysis thing and our incremental launches, but our hit rate's pretty darn good now.
Yeah.
Okay. That
You
makes
think
sense.
this Kitces.com thing will work out?
I'm cautiously optimistic at this point. I hope so. Now there's actually a lot of team members. It's as I think, Mark, you've lived on the entrepreneurial journey as well. Like it's one thing when you build the business around you, it takes on a different kind of layer of burden and responsibility as a founder when you're like, oh God, there are like people here who have created their family lives and livelihood like depending on this business to keep operating and growing so they can get their salary and put food on their table and send their kids to college and be able to retire someday. And that we've grown a lot of team over the past couple of years. So I will admit I feel more of that than I used to. So now I'm like, well, crap, I better make it work. I can go do other things, but they got kids and spouses. Right. We gotta make sure we're responsible here.
Yeah. Well, I've been interacting with your team and I've got to say they're incredible. So I'm sure they're very employable. But I think I totally hear where you're coming from.
Is LinkedIn in any way, shape, or form going to be displaced at some point?
No, I mean, look, we'll see. A lot of people thought Twitter had a really unique space that wasn't going to go anywhere because it was just like endemic in social media fabric for a long, long time, and it's kind of fallen off in engagement. And in particular for advisor community, I mean, I look at both where I spent my time over the past 10 to 15 years in a social media context and just where advisors come from. I mean, we've got 15 years of site traffic data about how much advisors are engaging across the major social media platforms as we see where they engage with our content and where they come in from. And there has been a complete wholesale shift from Twitter to LinkedIn over the past 5 years. Twitter was by a large margin the dominant channel for engaging with advisors around social media through the decade of the 2010s, probably 2 to 3x the rest of them combined. It's not that a huge number were there in absolute, but people who are on advisors who are on Twitter were very engaged on Twitter, and advisors who are on LinkedIn like logged in once a month and maybe did something. Now it is flipped the other direction in LinkedIn's favor. So now we see 2 to 3x the traffic from LinkedIn that we do from all their platforms combined. If something's going to displace LinkedIn, My bet is it's not going to happen fast. You're going to watch it happen over 3, 5, 7 years of a new thing just being so much better and so much more engaging. So first the early adopters go there, and then some of the mainstreamers show up, and then eventually it's just kind of the thing, and
Yeah.
the technology diffusion adoption curve still holds.
I think what might happen is there's a social network that emerges that bans AI content and automatically deletes all AI content. That might actually take off.
Yeah,
That's an
you
interesting
look
thought.
at some of the frustration out there now of just the amount of fake activity, AI activity, bot activity,
Right.
bot posting, bot response. I mean, we can see it on our stuff. Like there are people who are using AI applications to post engagement on our articles, and I mean, just it's not ambiguous, right? I mean, just the format and conversation style
Right.
is not ambiguous.
Yeah.
But we can see it happening, even people engaging in our content with bot tools.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to spot at this stage.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's so easy to spot that, like, I think it creates a disincentive for people to do it, at least for people who know what they're doing, right? Because it just is this not a good look for a lot of people, right? If they
Yeah,
start
I mean, I'll admit, I get why people create bots, like fake accounts to show up because they're trying to influence certain news or outcomes, right? Meta societal level. I get why people AI automate some of their content because it just takes time, and hey, like I'm supposed to show up on social media platforms, so I'll do it. I have no idea why advisors are using AI tools to automated AI reply to our posts. I don't understand what business or other ROI lever is being pulled for them by doing that. I don't particularly object. I guess it's driving some engagement